Welcome to another episode of the Intimate Marriage Podcast. We're going to have an amazing conversation with Dr. Funke Afolabi Brown, who is a sleep specialist. And before I say more, I just want to clarify, why would we be talking about sleep? Well, I think one of the number one causes of bad communication, pissy communication, unkind communication is being tired. And one of the number one causes of not having a more robust, nourishing, delightful sex life is being tired and worn out. And I say this as a woman who used to fall asleep during sex, not because it was bad, but because as soon as I relaxed enough, this is, when children were young and there was so much going on, and I would relax enough to be able to enjoy the pleasure, and I would be so relaxed I would drift off to sleep. So that was a very complicated phase in our marriage because my husband would always feel just so rejected, so hurt. He took it personally, and I never knew it happened until I woke up the next morning. It's not like I was conscious while I was falling asleep. So anyway, the point is that sleep is a super important topic as part of creating great communication, closeness, connection, kindness, and really sexy experiences. So I'll do a proper introduction, but a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. What a great way to start. I love this conversation already.
Okay, fabulous. Well, Dr. Funke Afolabi Brown, in fact, why don't you say your name? It sounds like poetry when you do.
Okay, it's Funke Afolabi Brown.
Is a triple board certified sleep medicine physician and pediatric pulmonologist. She is the founder of Restful Sleep MD. I mean, seriously, what a great name for a practice, Restful Sleep MD, where she helps high achieving professionals and their children change their relationship with sleep so they can move from being drained and exhausted to thriving in their families, careers, and relationships. She achieves this through clinical practice, coaching, speaking, and organization consultations. She's a best-selling author and has been featured on all kinds of media, including now the Intimate Marriage Podcast. So, do people come to you about sleep in the context of relationship?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's one of the areas where you start to see that effect, right? You have, especially with women who can sort of get by, and I think that's a thought, with little sleep. And really when they start to feel like, okay, I need help, is when they start to see, relationships affected, the way they're interacting with their partners, the way they're interacting with their children, especially. Their work performance, interacting with coworkers, working as a team, it definitely impacts dynamics significantly. And I see that a lot.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask some really basic questions, some of which I know the answers to and some of which I don't. And here's one that I haven't really thought about before, but it is arising for me. So, do you, as a sleep medicine expert, distinguish between actual bona fide physiological sleep disturbances that would be revealed on a sleep study, say, and just being too busy, having too much to do, being able to push ourselves to do more work or watch another Netflix show because that's easier than actually getting up and brushing our teeth? Like, there are so many. I think you use the term sleep hygiene. Maybe you could start by defining it, but I just think one of the fundamental questions that someone might have is, how do I distinguish between a bona fide physiological problem that would get a medical diagnosis and treatment and just having an overstuffed schedule and inadequate time management that doesn't actually prioritize sleep?
That is so good. And I think that's where, the work that I do is it's different from what a lot of my colleagues do, which is I look at sleep health as this holistic entity where we're not just looking at sleep ability, but we're also evaluating what your sleep opportunities are like. Because when you talk about sleep ability, to me, that's when you're really saying, okay, I'm trying, right? I'm putting all the phones away. I'm doing all the things I'm told to be
I'm
doing.
lying in bed in a quiet, dark room.
Exactly. I even had sex and my mind is still racing, right? Or I'm snoring and I'm waking up frequently. So that's where sort of that ability comes in. But then I also look at what that sleep opportunity is like, and that can be induced by behavioral factors, i.e., inability to set boundaries and say no, I can't take on one more task. Inability to set boundaries and say no, my child needs to sleep in your bedroom so that I can sleep in mine and have my space, right? So that's completely different, but it falls under that same umbrella of sleep health, because what ends up happening is the outcomes for both cases or scenarios are still the same, which is, the heart issues we hear a lot about, the increased risk of stroke and hypertension and metabolism problems. So
Wait, you're saying that so quickly because this is as familiar to you as, I don't know, putting your coat on and going out the door. And I think sleep is definitely a trending topic, but would you just say what you said, but slow down a little bit? And let me say one more thing before I do, because I think it's kind of fun. There is so much data on the positive impact in terms of longevity and quality of life when you have a great sex life. But in fact, I, anyway, have never met clients who want to invest in improving the quality of their relationship and having better sex in order to accomplish longevity, increased health. They want to do that because it feels good, because it has a positive impact right now. And the only kind of long term goal that influences people working on their relationships, in my experience, is to create a better experience for their children and to leave a legacy of a positive experience. But otherwise, the reason people work on their relationship is so it feels better now. When it comes to sleep, are people motivated to work on sleep in order to feel rested and be more pleasant and have more patience and more creativity and more follow through and more focus? Or are people also motivated to work on sleep for that list of things that you were rattling off that I'd love you to repeat a little bit more slowly?
so let me start with this. Yes, let me talk about some of the benefits of sleep, right? And, when we think about sleep, really, it impacts every system, every organ system in our body, from the top of our heads, i.e., improvement in memory. There are now studies that show that there could be a higher risk of developing Alzheimer's disease if we don't sleep well over a long period of time. There are also benefits when it comes to our heart health, because now we know that people who don't sleep well can have a higher risk of, heart attacks, of hypertension. There's increased risk of strokes. And this is all studies that have been going on for years.
Let's actually, if correct me, please, because this is your expertise, but my just very basic understanding is because when we're sleeping, our heart also gets to rest. Not completely, obviously, but we expect during sleep to have a lower heart rate and everything can really just hibernate for the night and have a rest. And sometimes, because unless there's a problem, we're not really aware of our heart function, we may not appreciate that our heart needs to rest just the way the rest of us does. Is that accurate?
That is true, because sleep is healing. So body tissue repair occurs during sleep. And your body almost pretty much hits a reset. And I like what you said. It doesn't mean that everything stops. Sleep is actually a pretty active process, because cleansing is going on of waste products in your brain, because during that time, growth hormone is being produced, and that affects, how your tissues, say for instance, you've worked out, how your tissues are, sort of repair themselves and prepare for the next day. Your metabolism. So certain hormones kind of rise and others drop over the course of the night of sleep. So when all those things go awry, then we start to see the impact of, insufficient sleep. right? And then, of course, there's the mental health piece is so key. And, I wanted to start with this because that sort of ties into why people come to see me and what motivates them to change. We know that people who don't sleep well have a higher chance of feeling anxious because during sleep, actually, especially certain stages of sleep, pleasant memory and unpleasant memory sort of go through this filing process. And when we don't have that, then the likelihood of staying in the place of trauma without adequately healing is there. And so we can start to see things like more irritability, mood issues with depression, or, even suicide has been shown to be associated with poor sleep. So now those things motivate people enough, especially with the way sleep has become such of like a trending topic right now. So people want to live better. I see people say, you know what, I'm exercising and I'm eating well, but I'm still having a hard time losing weight. Can you help me? Because I know sleep is something I struggle. And I read it online that sleep will help me. So I get that kind of complaints. But then I also have people saying, I'm not myself anymore. Like, I don't like who I'm becoming. I'm becoming mean and just like irritable all the time. And I'm chronically exhausted and I just can't keep up with tasks. And so that group of people, mainly women, come and say, I want to just be a better version of myself. I want to wake up and feel rested and achieve my goals. So that tends to be another motivator. So I kind of get a mixed bag. And some come because the doctor saw them and like, if you don't fix the sleep issue, you're going to die. And so that becomes the reason why they show up.
I think this is so interesting and such a significant context. I want to add one more piece. I don't actually have the statistic. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but it was something like 75. It was some very dramatically high number of problem accidents and negative events in our world are the consequence of sleep deprivation. Is that a statistic that you've heard?
I don't know if I think it all depends on where they're pulling the data from. Maybe not necessarily like a random sample. It might be a biased number, but I would say that, even within the medical field, this is a little bit older, a few years now, where they noted that at least 100,000 medical errors were attributed per year, were attributed to either consequence of sleep deprivation, meaning either a medical error or poor dosing or poor decision making on the part of the clinician side, and that is directly related to poor sleep. And then there's road traffic accidents, one of the major causes, especially in teenagers, for instance, of road traffic accidents is related to drowsy driving and really poor or low response time.
Okay, I think I also remember hearing it in the context of oil spills. That so interesting and beyond the scope of what we're going to talk about now, because this is really the context to then talk about the impact in relationships. So let's start with this trendy term. It was all over social media, quote, sleep divorce. You've come across this?
Yeah, I've written on it a couple of times too. It's
Will you just give the definition so we can then talk about it a little bit?
Yes. So sleep divorce is really, I mean, I would say it was a coined entity. It doesn't belong in the classification of sleep disorders, but it's when,
Or relationship disorders, but probably more relationship disorders than sleep
disorders, I know. But it's when a couple intentionally choose to sleep apart because of one or the other or both having sleep issues. So one of the most common is a snoring spouse that is now constantly disrupting the sleep of the other partner to the point where they make that mutual decision to stay separately. So what does that look like? They may have times at the beginning of the night where they spend time together. They have those moments of intimacy, and everybody goes to their separate rooms. And in the morning, they come back and life continues. And again, this has not been rigorously studied in research, but folks just anecdotally and just really surveying some, random samples of people that participate, it's been, in some circles, it's been shown that it actually helps in the sense of now we're not ignoring the elephant in the room, this huge snoring,
The loud elephant in the room.
the very loud elephant in the room. And as long as it is done in a way that's really strategic and the couple are in agreement, it tends to seem to work.
Yeah, I've been interviewed on various sleep podcasts and was an expert in a sleep summit. And so some of the things that I share, and I'd love to build with you coming each from our own point of view, but one of the things that I think is well, first of all, it's just really important that both people are getting enough sleep. And some people, they know they want more sleep, but they feel like there's all this kind of assumption and unfortunate meaning given to what it means if a couple doesn't sleep in the same bed, go to sleep in the same bed and wake up in the same bed, that if the couple's going to be in different rooms, then yeah, it's a move towards divorce, no matter how far it goes. And I think one of the most important things is to set it up with, first of all, it's a team move. It's not an individual move. I can't sleep with you anymore. It's like, we both need sleep. We are both individually and collectively better. How are we going to achieve that? And once that's established, I think one of the biggest things that needs attention is what I would categorize really as a power dynamic. Because if one person stays in the master bedroom, and that's the larger bed, and that's where the couple's going to make love, and that's where all the romance happens, then it really gives the other person the power to choose when are they going to come in and when are they going to stay away. And so the creating of like a romantic, intimate sex life together, it feels like the person is deciding whether or not to come into the bedroom or not. So I think one of the most important things is either you make a plan or you find your way to have sex in one room or the other. Like there's a way in which all that power shouldn't go to the other one. And then the one who's left in the master bedroom, well, is he going to come in tonight or is he not going to come in tonight? That also contributes to more of the divorce feeling because it's so disempowering. So whatever is going to be right for a particular couple in terms of how this communication happens, it needs to be more collaborative, both the time apart and the time coming together.
I love all of that. And I think that piece, and I love that we're coming at this from two different angles, but, I love the fact that we find that sweet spot, right? And I think it's so critical because if there is already a situation where there is strain in the sex life, like you said, it almost gives that other person a get out of jail free card. I mean,
get out of jail, get out of awkwardness jail.
Exactly. I don't know, but and I think that's where that communication, like where are we, from a relationship standpoint comes. And I would also say this, that's not necessarily the fix, because if that spouse that you're deciding to go ahead with the sleep divorce has snoring is not benign. Most times snoring is a sign that something is going on with their sleep, and that needs to be addressed. So there are deeper issues that you should continue to have conversations about, i.e., how do we get you to see a sleep specialist to address the snoring? What do we need to do to make sure you get quality sleep? Because even if there is this, if we decide to embark on sleep divorce and your sleep is still fragmented, you're still not going to be your best self. So it's not necessarily the fix, I would say, but, on the way to getting that addressed, I think it could potentially be in the right situations, but it's not the fix.
Okay, you make such a good point. So maybe one person gets enough sleep, but the other person is getting just as poor sleep as they were when they're in the same room. So with what you're saying, are you basically, thinking that ideally couples sleep in the same room and sleeping separately is temporary until both people's sleep issues are addressed?
I would say that's my take on it. I think if you're in a situation where one spouse is like, I'm absolutely not interested in fixing my snoring ever, I think I sound like a cat purring and not like a truck that's going out of control, and that's the final, then, in that case, you're mutually saying, okay, I guess this is maybe an area where we may not necessarily be able to agree to disagree or whatever. But in most cases, I just usually implore and encourage usually it's women, right? And their spouses, their husbands are snoring to say, okay, let's find a way to present this where the person doesn't feel like he has to be defensive all the time. But in the meantime, because you're probably yelling and nagging because you're so exhausted. And so you can't even frame this in a way that says, hey, I think about you, I love you, and I want your brain to get oxygen so we can continue to make high quality decisions, right? So you as the wife, maybe you need more sleep. So let's take care of that, make sure you're being taken care of as we sort of figure out a path to getting this issue resolved.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a couple hearing you speak. So, as you said, she slept well, basically, and he had intense sleep apnea and a few times each night would wake up because he wasn't breathing. And so he wasn't particularly aware of it. And he was someone who was independent and thought of himself as self-reliant and really found any of her communication to go to the doctor and get this fixed to just be nagging and disrespectful and definitely not inspiring him to take action. She, on the other hand, was petrified of abandonment. Like, she was concerned about being abandoned because when she would lie in bed and he would stop breathing for some amount of time and she would basically be, I was going to say have a mini panic attack, but I don't want to speak so casually in this context. So she would just become very anxious, not knowing whether or not he was going to start breathing again. And then he would start breathing again. But it meant that when she spoke with him, her anxiety and her fear of abandonment and her own internal wounding was basically seasoning that communication. And so one of the things that I coached her to do was actually to really, instead of trying to control and having her anxiety come through and like, you have to do this, but to instead really be vulnerable and say, I love you so much. And when you stop breathing, I become concerned I'm going to leave you and you're going to leave me. You're going to die and leave me. And I have that fear playing out a few times a night. It would be so loving for me if you could put attention on this so you can be healthier. Like, either you've got to say it so that the person is inspired and feels your care, or you've got to say it in a way that's genuinely vulnerable and not just, I'm super anxious, I'm afraid of abandonment, you have to fix my feelings. That doesn't really inspire people.
That is so on point. It is scary. It is scary to watch your loved one literally choke and almost, like exactly what you said, stop breathing several times at night. So these women are up all night. And so they're anxious, they're angry, they're exhausted. And so it's hard to manage all those emotions and really talk through what you're feeling and what you need done in a way that really makes sense and translates empathy and care and true concern. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just say, there are times when you can ask your partner to do something for you, and there are other times when you need to manage your own emotions and see what would actually inspire the partner to take action. Because if someone isn't taking action for their medical care and they have access to services, then there is something else going on. So I really appreciate the way our conversation has covered a lot of terrain. In other words, the impact of being sleep deprived that undermines all the good, fun, juicy parts that are so gratifying in a relationship: good communication, listening, collaboration, sex, erotic adventures. All of that is undermined by being sleep deprived. And then the actual reality of being sleep deprived and how that plays out, whether it's the concerned spouse witnessing the partner not, stopping breathing or any other variation that impacts health and then makes for a more stressful relationship. So with these kind of broad themes, what else would you want listeners to know or questions to ask themselves, places to put attention to uplevel their own sleep experiences and relationship?
I think we kind of mentioned it a little bit when you talked about when you mentioned sleep hygiene. I just usually encourage people to even at a as a baseline to make sure that you're practicing healthy sleep habits. Again, not everybody needs to see a sleep expert. Not everybody needs sleep coaching or to see a sleep medicine physician. And I think even before you start to jump and say, there's something going on with my sleep, just really make sure those boxes are checked. And these are things like having a consistent bedtime routine, having a consistent sleep time and wake time. And when it comes to that bedtime routine, really looking for, 2 or 3 activities that you enjoy. I love what you said. What you said when you started about falling asleep right away. That's a lot of women who are tired and stressed because that sleep drive is very high. But then stress is still there. There's still underlying stress. But that sleep drive is so high, it pretty much supersedes the underlying stress for a moment. And so really paying attention to that, really paying attention to building routines and setting those boundaries is key. Making sure your phone is not something that you're consuming content right before you spend time in bed, including time having conversations with your spouse as part of your routine. I think that is such a beautiful and healthy thing. And then, the caffeinated beverages, the stimulants, just really watching what you're eating, what you're drinking, how the timing of your medications, because all those things can lead to fragmented sleep and really ruin your sleep experience and ultimately relationships down the line. And so those are some things that I would say, pay attention to, really make time for sleep and see it as something that is critical, see it as something that is really important for you to be the best version of yourself.
Okay, well, the way that I'm going to take what you've just said and encapsulate it is this. If you want to enjoy your marriage more, if you want more closeness and connection, more sensuality, sexuality, if you want more from your relationship, if you haven't before, take some time and consider the quality of your sleep, because maybe improving your sleep will dramatically change the whole culture of your marriage because of how poor sleep can really undermine it. And then you've given so many different ideas on how to do that. I have to say, this is my favorite kind of conversation. It's one where we could easily continue for 3 hours. We're not going to, but if you're listening and you're also fascinated and want to think about how, like, what are the most efficient actions? What are the most pleasant actions that you might take to improve your sleep in order to be rested and full of vitality and improve the aspects of your relationship as well? Well, clearly, the next question is, how can someone follow you and follow up with you, Dr. Funke Afolabi Brown?
I love that segue. Beautiful. Even I want to sleep more after hearing you. Well, thank you for just this time. So you can find me on my website. It's www.restfulsleepmd.com, and I have a blog. I also have a YouTube channel that you can follow. It's Dr. Funke Brown. And then I'm on Instagram at Restful Sleep MD. So those are the 3 ways. And so if you are a high achieving woman who is really ready to take your relationships to the next level, I want to make sure that quality sleep is something that you're paying attention to, then I would love for you to get in touch and we could talk through how we could work together. And the best way would be to get to me through my website.
Okay, that is for high achieving women. You don't work with men?
I work with couples in my clinic. I also have a clinic practice. And so the coaching was what I talked about, where we really do work a lot on the mindset around sleep and strategies to help
I'm going to
everyone.
take what you said and say this because I know as you're listening, you may well be a woman who would want to respond or not to what's been shared. And you may be a couple listening together because there are many couples who they make it a regular part of nurturing their relationship to listen to this podcast together. And if you are a man listening, well, if I were you, I would contact Dr. Afolabi Brown if you're interested, because that wasn't really a no.
Yeah.
So I think we'll just leave it there in the realm of mystery. You're such a professional, you're so precise, and you're also a little bit vague and mysterious as a woman, and we love it all. So I think we'll leave it right there. Any
I love
last
it.
words?
Oh no, thank you. Thank you so much for the work you do. This is beautiful. And yeah, I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm so glad you're here too, and so inspired by your work, truly.